This is The Interview.
Just for formality's sake, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Biola Alabi. I'm the CEO of Biola Alabi Media, media and communications and production company in Lagos.
Okay. You wear many hats, right? So it was quite difficult coming up with questions, but we're going to focus on media today. With everything that happened in the past year, given the COVID-19 pandemic, how would you say the media landscape in Nigeria has changed?
I think, one of the exciting things is how the pandemic fast forward a lot of things. So I think that digital adoption when it comes to where you watch, how you consume. So I think on the consumer side and on the consumption side, there's been much more acceleration. So people that probably wouldn't have subscribed to platforms are now subscribing to platforms. I think consumption on platforms like YouTube has increased. The content on YouTube improve. Just the quality is changing. So I think on the consumer side, there's a lot of consumption. I think on the production side, there obviously was some stalls. There's funding constraints, but at the same time, I think because consumers are consuming more, avenues to monetize your content is also expanding. So there are multiple places to expand. But of course, cinema is one of the major places, and a lot of people haven't gone back to the cinema when it comes to monetization and it comes to the value chain. And that's something that we do need to, the cinemas need to feel safe again. People need to feel safe again. The cinemas were closed for so long. I think that when they did open, it was at 50% capacity. So we're seeing all of these come back, but of course they have huge economic effects on the industry, and I think that those are some of the things we're seeing. But the exciting part of it is just the acceleration of digital technology, digital adoption, and that is really helping us create better content.
Do you have an estimation of how much money the film industry has lost? Could you venture
I don't have the numbers. I wish I did. I those numbers had been sent to me a couple of times. I don't want to speculate because there are actually some really good estimates out there. And I can share them with you later. But there, yes, we know that it's in millions and millions of dollars, especially when you look at cinema and you also look at the production money lost on not producing as many productions as we would have. But what is great, and I think that one of the things we always have to talk about when we talk about the pandemic is also that the after effect of it in a place like Nigeria in comparison to other places was not as devastating as we thought it would be. And so what that means is that we were able to create safer studios, we were able to create safe production environments, and people were able to go back and produce much sooner than we thought we would, and much sooner than our colleagues around the world have been able to. So there are some places where we can stem the bleeding, but the industry definitely there was a lot of bleeding last year.
Okay, and let's go back to the beginning. How did you find yourself in media?
How did I find myself in media? So funny enough, I was halfway always interested in media. But I was growing up in the U.S. My parents were immigrants. It just wasn't a conversation we could entertain. It was very clear that there were safe professions, and that's where I needed to look. So if there was any interest in media, it was almost a passing interest. But as I started to sort of engage with different things in university, there would be opportunities to either intern and do this and do that. But once again, I still never took it as a serious career path until I joined the online startup. And when I joined, because I was then looking at paths in marketing, but really very professional paths. And so from doing marketing, I had to work with a team to produce our first ad.
Okay.
And of course, producing your first ad is really a production.
Yes,
it's not really, that's when I was introduced to production. I was introduced to how you relate with talent and different talent in the ecosystem, talent behind the camera, talent in front of the camera, directors, producers. It was so many people. I didn't even know, I didn't know it took that many people to make an ad. I was like, it's 3 minutes of airtime. It's 3 minutes and then 1 minute. Why do we need all these people? But anyway, it was a really interesting experience, but I loved it. And I think that when you see something that you were part of and it's airing across the country, I mean, it was on prime time in the U.S., this advert that we had produced for a company called bigwords.com at the time. They were selling college textbooks. And I think it was just fascinating to me. I just couldn't believe that someone in my little part of the world, I mean, people didn't even know I existed, and now I have an ad on national TV that I was in charge of. And I think that power, that just how amazing and how things can travel. And even till today, it still amazes me when I get a call from someone in the US and say, oh, we saw your film, we want to buy your film. And I'm like, how? Like, I mean, I continue to grill them. I'm like, how did you find this film? Where did you find this film? Or I get calls from people saying, I saw your film. And so I think for me, that power, I just never, I never knew that media was that powerful. And that's sort of how I got my first taste. And then after that, I started doing more stuff in production and then really got a very big break, which is working at Sesame Street.
So yes, I want to piggyback off that.
Yes.
How was that, one? And two, I understand you tried to bring it to Africa.
Yes.
And how did that go about?
Yes.
Yes. Let's talk about it.
So yes, I mean, I still had a lot of experience in marketing. They were looking for a marketing and sponsorship manager. I applied. I applied and just walked away that this is probably not going to happen. It's Sesame Street. I mean, who works at Sesame Street? I just didn't. I mean, once again, who gets that job? And so when I got the job, it was everything I thought it would be. I loved every part of it. I loved the projects I was working on. I got to work on a home video project, which was really post 9/11, which is how do you engage children to talk about the trauma that they experienced. And so my first day on the job, they're like, okay, we need your project needs a name. You need to come up with a name. And I was like, who else are they talking about? Are they talking to me? Is there someone else in the room? Like, how do I come up with the name? And just sort of like that excitement, just seeing how impactful, and those things turned into town halls. And I don't know if you were watching during this pandemic, Sesame Street did a partnership with CNN, and you saw quite a number of town halls. Literally, that came from the post 9/11 project that we did, and that's when they started the tradition of doing these town halls on how to engage children around traumatic events. So once again, this is a project you did like 20 years ago. You're still seeing elements of it on television today. So for me, I think media continues to just be mind-blowing of the power it has even after you're gone. It was a great experience, and from there I moved into international co-productions. And so doing international co-productions, started working in different countries on different projects. And when I got into international projects, I ended up working on our South Africa project, which was an amazing project. It had been around for a while. By the time I took over, it was really focused on educating children about HIV/AIDS, which is still a huge issue in South Africa. Going to South Africa quite a bit, I realized that this project needs to be across the continent. And so did a pitch, colleague and I did a feasibility study, went to 12 African countries on one trip, came back again and did 5 African countries. So we did 17 African countries within like a month, putting together this big justification of why we needed to do early childhood education media on the continent. Some of it happened, some of it didn't happen. We did some stuff in Tanzania. We did some stuff here in Nigeria. There was some stuff that happened in the north. And just last month, I got an email that the Kenyan version of a project that we started working on years ago is finally going on air. Awesome. So once again, you just never know how these things are going to go. And that's why I tell storytellers filmmakers that I work with, that I mentor, that we train, that believe in your story. You just never know the day someone is going to come and your story is going to come out and your story is going to come to a screen near people. It might not be today. It might not be when you want it. But the power of story is, it is always, no matter when it comes, it's going to be powerful. So I tell people really to just keep working on these things, because you never know when they're going to happen.
And do you think we have enough kids tailored programming in Nigeria?
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. I mean, that's a giveaway. But I think also too, with the content that we do have, I mean, and the people that are creating, because there are people creating that content now. I think we really need to be mindful of the content we're creating. We need to make sure that it is rooted in education. We need to make sure that it is that kids are learning from it, because one of the things that for me is also powerful is the return on investment when you invest in early childhood education. When you invest in those 0 to 7 years, 0 to 6 years, there's literally an $18 return for every dollar you spend on early childhood education. This has been proven around the world. And so when we're making content for children, let's just make sure we're mindful that children are learning from it and that we're teaching the lessons and building the society we want to see so that it is a better society, it is a kinder society, it is an empathetical society, it is a society that actually understands the interdependency that we have in our country, which is really scary today because we're not teaching that, we're not talking about that. And so I think those are the things that I want creators to keep in mind, because I am seeing some really exciting stuff come out.
Okay. And let's talk about Nollywood. Let's talk about Lara and the Beats and Banana Island Ghost and your production company. So how did that come about? When did you decide, I want to make Nollywood films?
So so once again, I mean, I'd been doing that my whole time at DSTV. At DSTV, one of the things that we really wanted to do was figure out a way to celebrate filmmakers so that filmmakers can want to make better films and more films. And so that's why we created the Africa Magic Viewers Choice Awards. And so from there, you could see over the years how the quality of films have improved across the continent. Yes, and so as part of that, we also started to find new people, and we wanted to create more content. So we then did the Africa Magic box office, which is basically every week we had a new film, our original films that we were doing, and those really grew the industry. They grew writers, they grew different talent in front of the camera, behind the camera, costume designers. And so for me, I started to meet some amazing young people in the course of my work at DSTV. So after I started my own company, which really started out as just going to be a consulting house. I wanted to be consulting, training, developing, really wasn't going to do productions. And then I got a couple of pitches. People kept on pitching productions to me. And that's sort of when we started with our first show around food, once again, promoting culture, promoting food, promoting African food, bukas and joints. So we did that, which I thought was a nice project. I was like, okay, this is a nice project. It's fine. And then Bibi Shashara came to me with Banana Island Ghost. He had pitched me a series before, which I really liked, and so I liked his style. I thought this would be a great opportunity to co-produce something, and so that's sort of how I got onto that. From there, I wanted to do a book series about two sisters. I have a sister, we're extremely close, we have sort of all this back and forth. And then while we were doing that, while I was starting the book series, it evolved into then a screenplay, and then a film called Lara and the Beat. So that's sort of how Lara and the Beat came about. And so there is some of it that is autobiographical, but it's like literally like to the up 10th degree. And so there's parts of it my mom's like, yeah, maybe, but like she's like, no. But it was fun making both films.
And what's some of the challenges of filmmaking in Nigeria?
I think just everywhere. There's still so many opportunities that we need to develop. There are opportunities when it comes to the consumer side, which is how we consume it, how people watch the films, but also on the production side. Number one is time and budget. We just never have enough time, you never have enough budget, but that's everywhere in the world, right? But even with us, it's much more acute because we have very tiny budgets that we have to spread really, really thin. There's infrastructure issues. If you're shooting and you have to go on location, getting people there, housing people, just providing just the welfare for people. And remember, these are labors of love. People are not always making what they should make, and then they have to travel across town to be there. We have traffic issues. So there's so many obstacles to making a film. So I always tell critics and people that by the time you see a film, the amount of safahed that has gone into making it, there has to also be some acknowledgement, even if you're criticizing. Even when I watch films that are just horrible, I still have to acknowledge the fact that someone put this together, someone independently put this together. They probably didn't have any support from anyone. This is just someone's idea, and they've put it together and they've put it on the screen. And I always give kudos to people for that, because it is really it is the structures that support people in other places just don't exist here. So, yeah, those are things we still have to build and create.
And finally, I know we've made strides, and when it comes to gender parity and equality, we're still have a very long way to go, right?
Yes.
And I wonder for a woman working in Nigeria's media industry, which is very patriarchal, how are you able to navigate, for lack of a better term, navigate it?
I mean, so one of the things about media actually is that once you start to get to certain positions, it becomes much more male dominated. And so as a woman, most of your life is spent around navigating and finding a way through a patriarchy that exists everywhere. And so I think that one of the things that we do need to do is really invest in creating much more important, like more talent in the industry. So we need more female directors. We need more female editors. I mean, one of the things I'm very passionate about is how do we train more female editors? How do we get more female editors into the industry? Because it's a really technical role, but it is it's the most important role. Yes. And there's a way that there are ways that we need narrative stories told, and it needs patience, it needs time, and a lot of that's a huge opportunity for us to build capacity. We need more female writers. We need more female, so that we're telling more stories that with a gender lens, which we do need to tell, and that gender lens needs to be nuanced. So those are places that we need to continue to build. But I think part of it is, how do you even break into this industry? So really helping people understand and creating those opportunities, creating those spaces for women. Because there are also times where if a space is not all women can come into a space that is not friendly to them. And so you really need to sort of figure out how to create more spaces that welcome women in. I mean, so many women have been breaking barriers in this industry, and there are a lot of women that are leading, but they're still not enough, and we know that. We know we need more female directors, more executive producers, more people with money to invest in the industry.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Yes, thank you.